The most indebted country in the world is United States debt. It has a debt of $36 trillion. This is such a huge debt, but ultimately, this money belongs to someone. People often point to China as the country that lends the most money to Africa, Asia, and even United States. They have lent money to many countries around the world, but the problem is that China is drowning in its own debt. Although not as much as United States, they also have $18 trillion in debt. A large portion of China's debt is to Chinese banks. You might say there is no debt because almost everything in China belongs to the state. This is not a wrong idea, but let's complicate things a bit because most banks in China are actually indebted to United States and banks. And China was the biggest lender to the US. If this seems very confusing to you, don't worry, you're not alone. It's very confusing for everyone in the world, but for now, this is just the tip of the iceberg. As we delve deeper into the video, everything will become even more complicated. Because the total debt of countries is $300 trillion. This figure is 3 times the size of the global economy, so there is no such amount of money in existence. Even if you stacked all the money in the world on top of each other, it wouldn't amount to $300 trillion. So we have lent money to each other for money that doesn't even exist, money that hasn't been printed. The really strange thing is this: if all the countries in the world have this much debt, who are we going to pay it back to? Let's begin. First, let's settle thousands of years of debt history in just a few minutes. What we call debt today is just a string of digital numbers. But the concept of debt is one of the oldest ideas in the world. Debt is really just a promise. Human needs have remained unchanged for thousands of years. We want to obtain something immediately, but pay for it later. It was the same 5,000 years ago. Primitive man wanted to eat meat immediately because he was hungry, but he would pay for it by giving a tool that might take months to make. This was the first concept of debt in the world. Hundreds of years passed, and borrowing money on credit turned into something much bigger, because kingdoms had been established, and kings had much greater ambitions. They were building castles, commissioning ships, or casting large cannons. Even the kings didn't have enough money for these things. In the 1600s, England faced this problem. They wanted to establish an empire that would spread throughout the world, but they had no money. To solve this problem, they collected money from the people. But as I said at the beginning, borrowing is a promise, so the state had to make a promise to the people. That promise was, give me your money now, and in return, the state will give you a written document, and you can get your money back whenever you want, with interest. This system continues today. Today, it is called government bonds, but its origins were actually that simple. Another 300 years passed, and money had become globalized, circulating all over the world. But there was still a problem. Some currencies were valuable, while others were worthless. Not all countries could integrate their currencies with gold. To solve this problem, they placed the dollar at the center of the financial system. The reason I purchased the program that created the map you see on the screen today with dollars is precisely this. In today's financial system, all currencies are indexed to the dollar, and the first recourse for countries seeking money is to sell bonds. So, what happens if all countries suddenly want to cash in these bonds? The short answer is that the country goes bankrupt. This is exactly what happened in Greece in 2008. The people no longer trusted the government's promises, so everyone sold off their bonds. Greece has still not fully recovered from that crisis in 2008. Now that we've discussed what debt is, let's get to the main point. If all countries have debt, who does this money belong to? Don't expect me to say that there are 7 secret families or a secret organization called the Illuminati, because countries' debts don't progress in straight lines like people's debts. It's circular. Let's look at the world's most indebted country. You might think, who would lend money to a rich country like United States? But the surprising thing is that 70% of United States' debt is actually owed to United States itself. The United States borrows money from its banks by issuing bonds to them. Then, an ordinary person buys bonds from the bank with their savings. Meanwhile, the United States uses the borrowed money to make investments, growing its economy. As the economy grows, the taxes collected from the public increase. As a result, the money returns to the government. This vicious cycle continues and grows. As the debt grows, so does the economy. It may sound strange, but this is the reality. The United States has the world's largest economy because it is the world's most indebted country. This circular cycle is almost identical between countries. Each country borrows from another and lends to another. For example, Japan's economy is very strong, and its banks are full of US dollars. The Netherlands borrows from Japan, but they don't keep the money they borrow within the Netherlands. At that point, Turkey also needs money. The Netherlands lends part of the money to Turkey and part to Brazil. These two countries invest and earn money. In the end, because the bank in Turkey or Brazil has earned so much, it goes and buys bonds from the US again. The money moved between the 5 countries. All 5 countries earned interest income. In the end, the money came full circle and returned to the same place. But now, 4 countries owe each other money. The strangest part is that there was no physical money involved, just numbers transferred between banks. So can this vicious cycle be broken somewhere? There are 2 ways to do this. The first is for countries to stop borrowing. But they won't do this, because without debt, their economies will shrink, they won't be able to invest, and they won't be able to pay salaries. This means losing the election. So the first way is impossible. No country can do without borrowing. The second way is to default on the debt. This can happen. Think about yourself. You have debt and no money to pay it off. Your friend might help you out for a few months, but countries can't do that. That's why countries take on more debt to pay off their existing debt. For example, let's say Brazil can't pay off its debt in this vicious cycle. Then it gets caught up in another vicious cycle, like borrowing from China, and the cycle continues. For countries, it doesn't really matter how much debt they have, as long as they can stay in this cycle. This is exactly what most countries do. They borrow, then borrow again to pay off their debt. I know what I've been saying so far is upsetting. You paid your credit card bill on time, you felt embarrassed asking your friend for money, and maybe you couldn't sleep at night because you couldn't pay your debts, because your family told you since childhood that debt is a bad thing. But that's not how the system actually works. Big companies, banks, and countries are not afraid of debt at all. The system is built on debt. Countries know this very well. Forget about leaders not being able to sleep at night. The more debt they have, the more comfortably they sleep. The only thing that matters is maintaining balance and staying within the cycle, because those who can't maintain this balance don't end well. There is a risk in borrowing money. As countries continue to borrow, the interest on the debt also grows. Over time, all of the country's resources go towards paying the interest. If things have reached this point, you can no longer build new hospitals, schools, or bridges. A country's debt payments should not exceed its annual revenue. Countries like Germany, Spain, or France maintain this ratio. But if you break this balance, you will be thrown into a vicious cycle, and no one will lend to you again. At that point, the only thing a country can do is print money. More money leads to inflation, and in the end, money loses all its value. What Venezuela is experiencing, no one is lending them money anymore. Their currency has lost all value. Look at this photo. A beach bag made of money is being sold for much less than the amount of money on it. I said it's important to stay in this vicious cycle. Sometimes it can also be a punishment. Countries like Iran or Afghanistan can no longer enter this cycle even if they wanted to. This is a punishment imposed to halt those countries' economies. If you cannot borrow money, your economy shrinks every day. After February 2022, Russia was removed from this vicious cycle. That same year, their economy contracted by 2%. This was a question asked all over the world. Everyone, from 1 5-year-old children to 6 0-year-old adults, thought that since all countries owed each other money, they should just cancel the debts and start from scratch. It's a very innocent request, but you know the system now. You know that such a thing is impossible. The total debt of all countries in the world is $300 trillion. If you stack $1 million bills on top of each other, they would be as tall as a 30-story skyscraper. If you stack $1 billion on top of each other, they would reach a length of 100 kilometers, which is long enough to touch the Earth's atmosphere. Now consider $300 trillion. What a sum of money. If stacked, it would form a bridge stretching from Earth to the Moon. Not just one, but 50 such bridges. That's how much countries owe each other. Finally, let's return to the initial question. Whose money is this? The answer, no one's. In fact, there isn't even that much money in the world.